one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Robbie, before you start, can I say one story about Bill?
Sure.
Ryan, I moved here in 1984. In 85 and 86 and 87, Bill and I coached a boys soccer team called the Rowdies. And our first 2 seasons, we did not win a game. We lost every one, but we had 4 players that we knew were going to be superstars. And that is the year after Tom Hasbrook started a traveling team and took all 4 of the players off our team. So we didn't do that well.
Good story, David.
Yeah, I thought it was sort of.
You gave up coaching after that?
No, I had 2 doors to play soccer, so I was going on.
You should have taken advantage of the transfer portal.
If your kids are anything like mine, they wouldn't have listened to you.
No, they listened to me pretty good, actually. Sometimes. When they were teenagers, that's when the tough years started.
Okay, the pontification section is closed.
Come on.
All right, this evening we've got a few recognized guests that we need to get to. Before Dr. Harvey approaches the podium, there are congratulations in order. Today, the Buckhannon Upshur Chamber of Commerce doled out its annual awards. And Dr. Harvey, is Upshur County's Citizen of the Year. So congratulations. Each year, as you know, the Chamber has an awards ceremony, and this year it was virtual again. Hopefully next year we'll be back to enjoying each other at the Convention Center. The Businesswoman of the Year was Elisa Lively. Businessman of the Year was Chris Wendling. Business of the Year was Citizens Bank of West Virginia. And the Organization of the Year was the Upshur County Trails System. So congratulations to all who were award recipients from the Chamber. And thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the event once again this year. So, Dr. Harvey.
Gonna let me go first?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Number 1 here, B1.
Okay. Do you want the full brief, or do we wait till we get to the
Let us
agenda?
have it. We can have it.
We're going to bring that to the table, right?
Yes, we are. Council, you'll see before Dr. Harvey gets started, because we've been doing this here recently, I asked Teresa to notate but by each director and person who would address the council as a guest, the line item in which they are here to discuss. So while they are here, we will go ahead and entertain the F1, which is what Dr. Harvey, if you want to call him Dr. Harvey, is here to discuss with us.
Well, and I can say for sure that Jeff has worked for a lot of years, and Jeff will continue to work as a way to address me moving forward. So I take no offense at all to the Mr. Doctor thing. So, well, first of all, thanks everybody for the kind thoughts when it comes to the Chamber Award. I know that I was told afterward that my wife was sworn to secrecy about certain things, and she did a good job on that. And it was something that certainly wasn't expected, and still kind of a little bit humbled and kind of stupefied by the awarding of it. So thanks for everybody that was involved.
I told her she could talk to Tammy, and that's it. And me, that's it.
Well, in hindsight, you start to think about, what are those questions about, my bio and all that kind of stuff. Now it all makes a little bit more sense. So, all right. Well, so I'm here tonight to give you an update, a long overdue update on a project that we started last year. Which is a study, I call it a capability study in the slides that went passed around, on the emergency services sector here in the city and the county. And this brief is exactly the same, at least in initial format, that I delivered to the County Commission last week. That's how the scheduling and everything worked out. But we've been working on this for a while, and we had some hiccups along the way with virus surges and anything else and all that, but we've gotten to a point where there's progress made, there's data to share, and I made the assumption that you kind of want to know where we were at with this. So that's why I'm here tonight. We'll be happy to answer any questions when I get through the slides here, and I'll try to make it quick. So you remember from the process that we said in order to get it going, we felt like it was very important to engage the potential participants in the study well ahead of having planning meetings and things like that. I think that a lot of our community members, ranging from the public clear up through each of the agencies that could be involved, certainly the governmental entities that are involved, have a lot of ideas about things that this study could address and issues that it could tackle. But we felt like we weren't going to be able to to make any progress on any of those without having a firm idea of what the full range of our stakeholders felt like some of the issues were. So we started this project with what we dubbed as a roadshow in the very beginning. And what we've done is gone around to various community entities and asked them simply 2 questions. We've given them an overview of the project. We've said, what would you or your agency like to learn from or get out of this study? And what would make it convenient for you to participate? And I mistakenly thought in the beginning that roadshow would be something we would just do, check the box, gather the data, write a report, move on. I've come to learn that I believe that the roadshow ideally will continue on through this entire project, even hopefully beyond the end of my contract with the city and the county. And the reason I say that is it's almost like snowball sampling in the academic world. I'll be talking to somebody and they give me good insight, and then they'll say, well, have you talked to so-and-so? Well, no, I haven't. So I put them on the list and I reach out and I try to talk to them. So, it's been really enlightening, particularly because we started that process with non-traditional emergency services providers. So we waited to do police, fire, and EMS later into the fold. EMS got in a little bit early, but we did that on purpose because we wanted folks to realize that we are looking at this holistically, a whole community approach versus the triad emergency services, police, fire, and EMS. So a lot of times when we would go and talk to entities and we would be explaining the project, they would ask what role we thought they could play. Or they would ask why we were considering them, And you can see the range of partner types on that first non-title slide that we've gotten involved in this. And as you can imagine, there's several that fall under some of those headings. So once we start talking about the range of emergency services, it's more than just response. There's elements that come into play for preparing. There's certainly information sharing and actual tactical maneuvers when we are responding. But there are a lot of other partners that come online in the recovery phase that don't have acute response responsibilities, but they do have a lot of information to share, needs that they serve, people that they serve, and really unique insight that we can use in the recovery phase. So once we explain that, it becomes a really interesting conversation. So I'm going to share some of the preliminary findings of that roadshow that we've gotten done to date. The way that I did this is I kind of looked at all that we had and I started trying to identify persistent themes that kept coming up. So, one of the things that I'll get to, but it kind of works out of this being looped in early enough, a little bit more robust of a communications procedure, not because they feel left out, but because they want to be able to plug in earlier. We had that come at us from several entities said different ways. So it was really neat to hear people kind of coalesce around some of these themes in what they told us without really any prompting. I'm pleased to report that there are a lot of little things, but really we have 4 primary themes. And I'm glad about that, one, because 4 is a manageable number. I think as we move forward, I think that we can really talk about making progress along those 4 individual paths. As opposed to, say, having 20 or 30 major items, it would have been difficult to make any meaningful progress on that many different items. So I'm glad to see that we're sort of coming around 4 different themes here. So the first one of those is going to be no surprise to anybody if you followed any type of local media. And of course, personnel, staffing, volunteerism, those things have been already well documented to date. And of course, whenever people have talked to us, they've brought that up. The emergency services, even though we still got a few more agencies to get to, every one of them has talked about that in one way or another. But outside of the emergency responders, we've heard that too. Our non-governmental organizations or voluntary organizations, participation with them is much different than what it has been in the past. Numbers being willing to participate are much different than what they've been in the past. And even things like donations after a disaster, what we see a lot is people cleaning out a closet as opposed to being able to provide things that folks need. Now you can see that in any USA Today report after there's any type of crisis across the world, but it came at us locally here as well. The other one that I think you probably can guess is communications, but actually I need to back up. Sorry, I missed a bullet. You take notes, refer to your notes for a reason. So I had a bullet under personnel and volunteerism. Several folks asked us to get all levels of the organizations involved. So our roadshow was largely with senior leadership. We've talked with chiefs and directors and things like that. But we've had several people say, you know, it's going to fall to all levels of our organization to implement anything that we come up with. So it would serve us well to get them involved in the project. I thought that was really meaningful insight. So making sure that we show that those contributions are valued from all those individuals and really seek to get frontline personnel involved in this project. Now I can move on to communications. Communications is the other buzzword. Anytime you say what can be done to make emergency services better, you have about 5 people that are wrangling to get in the front and say communications first. So we certainly heard that in some of these conversations. There are technological equipment needs that we've got to try to address. There's some, technology evolves. It's the same in the communications sector. I know that's not news to anyone. Those things certainly came to play, but so did the human element of communications. And it doesn't matter if you have the latest and greatest radio hanging down on your side. If you don't pick it up and hit the button to talk to who needs the message, then we haven't effectively communicated. So now that sounds really negative. And we certainly had some folks relate to us that there have been instances when they felt like they should have been communicated with, but were not. You see that all the time. When we've done some after action from COVID, we've kind of heard a version of that. I'm sure whenever they debrief the situation from the fire on Main Street, there were some words like that. It always comes up. But I don't mean that to be negative. Like I said earlier, it's just a matter of expanding the definition of who needs the information. We have a lot of non-traditional partners that have come online really because of COVID. They were quite valuable to what we were trying to do, and it's going to be beneficial for us to keep them in the loop. So we need to expand the definition of who needs to be looped in, what types of information they need, when they need it, and beyond a notification, what do they need to know about the unfolding situations that they can mobilize their people and the support that they can provide. Let me pause there for a second because I'm getting to the two that are a little bit deeper to unpack. Questions yet?
Any questions for
You
Jeff?
mentioned technology needs. What is it, communications?
So within communications, one of the things is we've got a lot of different systems that serve a lot of different purposes. And there is some interoperability within those systems now. There are still some interoperability needs. So that's an example of doing, kind of trying to bring those things together. Also, and I need to dig a little bit deeper on this and talk to some of our local people here about this specifically. But because things change so fast, it's almost like bringing everybody up to a certain level. That way, whenever the next version 3.0 of whatever comes about, we've got reasonably a baseline to be able to build from and bring everybody up rather than have, everybody all across the spectrum as they go.
So right now, all of the first responders, are they on the same radio frequencies, or do they have the same capabilities when they come together?
They're working toward that, but currently right now it's not identical across the field. There's some reasons for that. But, I mean, there are some legitimate reasons for there to be some differences and things like that, but they are all working toward some capability there. And there is makeshift interoperability that we've worked on. So something as simple as, here's my radio tuned in, if you'll carry both of them. I mean, so we've got some kind of, field engineering that we use whenever we need to as well. So I think everybody recognizes the need and they adapt and overcome accordingly whenever we have big situations.
How are you going to differentiate between, and this is always a sticky wicket, the need to know and want to know? That's where I'm assuming, from my lifelong experiences, that's where the biggest complaint is in communication.
Mm-hmm.
Something's happening, and somebody just, I think Matt would call them looky-loos. They want all the information of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they don't need to know right away. So how are you going to differentiate?
So I think there's a couple of things to look at there. First of all, there's emergency public information that is certainly open source. That's a lot of just straight up safety type information. What we've been talking about with some of these partners, they wouldn't have made our list for the roadshow had we not felt that they had a legitimate role to play in a large-scale response. So I think that even some of those partners that have come online or are coming online that we're just learning about, there's some programmatic and policy things we've got to work through there. What types of services can they provide? What information best relates to enable them to be able to do what they do. So I don't look at this as being sort of just proclaim things into the abyss. I think that as we identify who our partners are, we can plan out who they are, what they need, and why they need it, and then we can figure out how to get them that information accordingly. So I think that in that sense, there will be at least some nominal level of a need to know. I do think that there's obviously certain information, especially when you get into human cost things or those that are kind of law-centric or something like that, where there's certainly needs for confidentiality. Medical's another good example of some of those things. But I'm a subscriber to the fact that you can't over-communicate in a crisis. You can mess it up, but you can't over-communicate in a crisis. So I think that what we need to do also is gain some clarity on what is the thing that we really can't share and what is a way around that. You'll remember from your time at the Board of Ed, we would use initials or we would talk about gender and a grade or something along those lines to help contextualize it. So I'm not a big fan of codes either, but I think that we can talk about ways to get people the information that will prompt their response without divulging too much.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So the last two big bullets there. So I said culture change, and I really hesitated to say culture change because every time you say that, people sort of either throw up the cross with their fingers or they run away or they do whatever. So bear with me a minute as I try to describe what I'm talking about with a culture change. I think it's two-pronged. I think that it's an emergency services thing, and by that I mean the whole community, not again just the triad, police, fire, EMS, but the whole network. And I also think there's an element for this for our public as well. And I'll start with the public one because you see it's shorter if you're looking at my bullet list. But a better understanding of what comprises emergency services. So I think that our constituency goes to a lot of different entities for a lot of different things, right? They know who can provide the assistance that they need, and this is all peacetime type decisions. And they wonder if these same types of agencies can provide those services or that information or whatever it is whenever things are constrained and we're in a large-scale emergency. Well, maybe they can, maybe they can't. Some of these entities have separate emergency responsibilities that they have to go into, and that kind of puts some of their daily operations on hold and things like that. Well, that creates a real disconnect with the end user of the service. So that's one example of what I mean when I say a better understanding what comprises emergency services with my little quote marks in the air. And also, just what do our partners do? When you ask the average resident about what a fire department does, what are they going to say? Put out fires, right? Mm-hmm. But that's a drop in the bucket for what those entities do. So, if we had an understanding of the full range of the assistance that those entities can provide, then we might be able to engage our constituency a little bit more thoroughly on needs and why those needs are there and the roles that we all have to play in making sure those services are there. That's a two-sided thing. Our agencies, I think, could use a good dose of what our public has as expectations of them. Some entities do a good job of that with surveying and things like that, but I think just as much as our public kind of has assumptions about what the services provide, some of our service providers have assumptions about what our public wants or our public needs. So we've got some two-way information sharing to try to broker out there. And then if we can get that knowledge going, if we can work on building that knowledge base, then we enable better decision making based on some of those things. So as our service providers think of ways to be able to expand or to grow or to evolve, what's expected of them, and those expectations from coming from a good, well-informed public can be very valuable. So I think that's the type of thing we're looking at from the John Q side of the house. From our agencies, change can be a good thing. And particularly within the emergency services, I don't want to be the guy that's yelling change all the time, because those police, fire, EMS are tradition-laden services, and that's a lot of what makes them special. So we want to retain certainly those things, But change and evolution can be a good thing. I've also got in my notes data-supported decision-making. That's something that was kind of a theme there. And that's something that all of you have heard a lot about, talking about response times and number of times out the door and all that type of thing. But also just, good information about internal decisions that need to be made, equipment that needs to be purchased, things that we can use to do like an internal benefit cost analysis on certain things. All of those are really good pieces of data to have. The ability to be able to identify overlapping services, where that's truly redundant and where there's good reason for some of that overlap. These are all things that we sort of know, but we don't necessarily know all the context around it. So we had several people that mentioned that type of phenomenon to us. Knowing the community's expectations again. Something else, what is needed for growth? And is the answer to that question always money? I think for a lot of things that we need to do, the answer is yes, of course, it's money. But there's other ways that we can support growth within this whole community kind of approach, through mentoring, through some of the information sharing that we're talking about, and a lot of those things. And we really haven't explored many of those opportunities, especially when you get outside of the traditional emergency services. Finally, with under culture changes, thinking holistically, and what I mean by that is the full cycle of emergency management. So mitigation to preparedness to response to recovery. We have an enormous number of partners in the community here that can play really critical roles in a lot of those different areas. So to say that you're a part of this doesn't mean that you roll out the garage door whenever an alarm goes off. So we've got to identify those, know what services they can bring in, and then kind of build some public awareness of the criticality of all of these providers and how they play those roles in emergencies. Which leads me to bullet number 4, who participates in emergency services. Identifying what they can provide and how that's efficiently accessed. So we need to know more than what you can find on everybody's webpage. The first paragraph there gives you a 25,000 foot view, and that's usually just enough to confuse you, especially if you're in a crisis situation where you're diminished in your thinking capacities anyway, and you've got to see directly what it is you need. Furthermore, if you have that understanding, do we need to call the CEO at 3 a.m. every time? Perhaps there's someone else in the organization that can say yes, that we can go directly to, get the service faster and just make a little bit more efficient of a process there. Making a network map of what this all looks like. I think if you've participated in the community task force for the pandemic, the range of entities that have been regularly on those calls is much broader than what most people would think of when they think of emergency services providers. The folks that came to play when we had the Main Street fire, when we had the Holly Apartments fire, lots of non-traditional folks there. So actually getting on paper, kind of mapped out what that looks like would be very beneficial for us. So we've got a lot of good things there, but we've also got some work to do there. So when we invite this gamut of whole community partners in, and I don't yet know how that's going to happen. I'm not trying to advocate meeting everybody to death or something like that, but figuring out how we can make that information available, accessible to everybody, and then building some level of collegiality during peacetime, I think is going to be critical to the success of this. Even if I can access a shared drive spreadsheet or something like that that says that John Smith can provide X, Y, or Z, if I've never met John, it's not going to be very efficient. So those, like I said, there's lots of little nuanced things, trying to keep this somewhat brief. Those are really the main themes that we're starting to see come out of this roadshow. Any questions that stem out of the culture change or the who's in the network?
I think this is going to be very beneficial as we hopefully at some point can come together as a community to figure out how we can perhaps add some staffing out in the county. This data is going to show us where the call volume is the highest, what stations make the most sense, what stations are most beneficial helping Buckhannon, where Buckhannon can help. And I agree wholeheartedly with the equipment purchasing. It makes no sense for these neighboring departments to all buy the same equipment just because they don't realize their neighbor is also buying the same equipment. Because if there's a fire in Adrian, Rock Cave and Washington District and Buckhannon and Ellamore, they're all there anyway. So there's no sense in everybody coming to the show with the same exact piece of equipment when if equipment A has 4, but equipment B and C is needed and there's 0, that's, there needs to be a lot of collaboration, and I appreciate the fact that this is looking into that too.
Well, and I think that there are certain resources where we need a lot of duplication. I mean, there are certain apparatus that we really do need, where redundancy is necessary on a scene, like we saw on Main Street, but it's also necessary to maintain a capability in case 911 tone drops again for the same type of situation. But, to the point of being strategic about what that entire battery of resources looks like, I do think that there's a lot of room for conversation there. So, hopefully we're able to provide some parameters for that through this, and maybe provide some different options to consider, baseline jump points where we can say, here's a model, what would make it viable in our community, things like that. But I think that a lot of our entities, there's a bit of a misconception out there, I think, that everyone within the emergency services has their trench lines done. And, I live in the real world. I see what you see. I mean, there is some of that out there. I'm not denying that. But I think that everyone that we've talked to, whether they're a traditional emergency provider or not, all share the same goal. So if we can figure out a way to be able to, maybe just provide facts, but neutral type facts and things like that. We and my crew have tried to stay neutral in this. I know that I'm known around here, so that carries with it a certain good and bad thing. But we want everybody to know that their input is important to this. We want everybody to know that we need all these agencies, and that how can we make this broadly applicable to all agencies as opposed to one agency or one of our 2 governmental jurisdictions. It's got to apply to all.
Sure.
Have you had the interaction with our local state legislators?
We've not done legislation, and that's not to say we won't. We just haven't. We've tried to stick directly with service providers here locally. We even have some regional entities that we've not reached out to because we wanted to keep roadshow stuff within the confines of our county lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's eventually going to come down to funding, and to my understanding, there's no legislative mechanism for counties to raise funds enough to hire people to put them out in the county. And so this question may, once we discover what's happening and then what we can do about it, we're left with.
Well, I think the data will be as useful to some of our regional, state, and higher partners just as it is to us. So it puts us in a better position if we can go with well informed into some conversations about what we might be able to do. And we work regularly with at least state emergency management. We'll continue to do so on all of our projects. And we in the very beginning of some of this, we did approach and this was back in some of the original scoping. We did talk with our area liaison to see if this could be beneficial to some of those partners if we were to do it locally. He seemed to think that it could be helpful. Now, in what ways, we didn't know what data we had, so it was a very, very early conversation. I owe you I know I'm running way over my time slot here, but I owe you a little bit of info about where we're going. So the next thing that I really want to get going is we've got some ideas as to what our agencies would like to be able to get out of this. I think it's high time to start getting our public involved in some of this. I think there's different ways to do that. Initially, some kind of instinct-laden feedback, intuitive feedback can come through the form of a survey, something along those lines. Where we're talking about gauging the effectiveness of our whole community emergency services, soliciting feedback on the most significant challenges they feel we see, and maybe some solutions for things as John Q sees it. We're entrenched in this, so our thinking on it is limited in some ways. Sometimes those outside of the service ideas can trigger a good thought. Long-term vision, I see some more targeted outreach via surveys on certain issues rather than broad brush. I can see some things like focus groups, and of course we can do the town hall and things like that. But when we talk about whole community engagement, we cannot do that without our public, so we need to make sure that we get that involved. I think it's the next to last slide. You see kind of a sliding arrow thing. I thought I needed some color in the presentation that kind of gives you an idea of what the tasks are and where they fall over, say, the next 12 or so months. And then you can see what's up next on the last slide there. I owe you, the first due out that they had agreed to give in the beginning was a gap analysis report. So while we're doing some initial public outreach, we've kind of talked to some of our provider agencies and things, knowing that we would need, we'd be coming back to them for some resource information, like what equipment do they have, what training have they got, and things like that. So it's time to start working our way back through that. We have a pretty good idea of what our risks are because we've reviewed a lot of those risk and vulnerability assessments. We know what folks want to get out of this. To close that loop on gaps, we need the resource list so we can compare it back to the risks and vulnerabilities. So I appreciate you being patient with me, but there's a lot of data to share. So I want to
well, you know, this is the city and the county both. We've asked for this, and I appreciate the report. I know council does too, and you know, we're looking forward to seeing what continues to develop out of it, because this ultimately is going to help bring all of our emergency services together and function at a more efficient rate to benefit our community. So we appreciate the work that you're doing on it.
And I know there's a few other initiatives around, so if there's ways to be, you know, fly on the wall for some of those meetings to make sure that what we're doing is accounting for some of those initiatives consistent with, or at least complementary to, we would welcome that opportunity.
Well, this could also end up being a model for a lot of other counties in our state to use as well. So,
well, many of the challenges we face are common challenges. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Be safe.
Okay. I'm making sure that we're okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Up next, who seems to be no stranger to meetings, is Jennifer Bosjan. Jennifer, I think we've seen you more in your very short tenure of being the Executive Director of the Development Authority than we saw the last two combined. So,
Especially in the last 2 months.
we appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, and good evening to you all. The Upshur County Development Authority is serving as the applicant organization for, as a result of Create Buckhannon's funding of some grant writing here for our county for a workforce development grant. And this is a planning grant that we're going to ask the Appalachian Regional Commission for a $50,000 planning grant to really develop the data that we need to and some recommendations for what we need to do as far as implementation around our workforce training capacity. Training ecosystem is what our proposal says. I love that word. So specifically, we're going to look at regional assets, industry needs, training providers, labor force skill sets, that sort of thing, educational attainment, and we're hoping to look at the wraparound kind of services that support employment, like transportation, childcare, those kind of things. So my request is that you provide us with a letter of support, and Mr. O'Neill has drafted something up, and so that's my request for this evening.
Council, if you want to look at the draft, it is right behind your agenda. Where it's at the top, it says B2-F2. This is the letter that has been prepared, and Mr. O'Neill has given his seal of approval on it for the city of Buckhannon. So what Jennifer's asking is if you would authorize me to sign the letter, which we have an official copy right here, and she can take it with her this evening.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rigger, a second by Mr. Rylance. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. And
You take all my pens.
let you know that it's been really
Thank you.
refreshing to reach out to all of the institutions of higher learning around here. The presidents have all immediately have responded to getting involved in this. So it's really good news. It's really great to.
Great job.
That's true. This is yours.
I can prove it.
Oh, listen, ask Patty, who I worked with for 10 years. The pens all walk out of the office and then they end up on my dresser and there's just a pile of them. So, okay. We have finished with the time in the evening where we have our guests who made the agenda. So we are now to go down through just as they signed in. Dennis has asked to address the council, and he wants to talk to us about a pancake breakfast.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is just a little notice that this Saturday at the American Legion Building, from 8 to noon, it's a free sausage and pancake breakfast for veterans and their spouses. Bring your ID. Like I say, it's free. Bring your spouse. You better have your mistress, or bring all three. It's at 16 South Canal. For those who don't know, it's Redneck's Canal Lounge. That takes care of that announcement. I have one more that I didn't mention. I will probably have a report ready for the next meeting on May 5th, but I won't be here. I'll give a report at the following meeting. I'm having carpal tunnel surgery that day on the left side, left wrist. I'm just going to take the rest of the day off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Take care of that.
Okay. Up next is a Mr. Buck Edwards. Good evening.
Good evening. Sorry Mr. Harvey left, because I was going to make a real joke about him winning and the new truck that I got when I won in 2016. But he left. So. But anyhow, last fall I became concerned with our horticultural program downtown. We lost our hanging baskets in August, and I was given a reason why, and I accepted that reason even though I didn't believe that reason. But then again this spring, all of our flower planters had just been neglected. And if it wasn't for Robbie last Friday evening weeding all of those planters on Main Street, they would still been that way, or I was going to weed them on Saturday and Sunday. But Robbie done it Friday night. And I told him I would take care of the Riverwalk because they've just been neglected. Now, you may not think that's a very big deal about that whole horticultural program on Main Street, but it is a big deal. I travel the state, I travel all over the state. I talk about Buckhannon all the time. And one of the first things that people say about Buckhannon is how great our Main Street is. And the second thing they say is about how great the flowers are on Main Street. So it's a big deal. And I think it needs to have a higher priority in the city, and that more focus needs to be placed on that. Now, I don't like to come with a problem without a solution, so I'm going to give you one. I would be willing, and I know there's several other people in this community that would be willing to help with that horticulture on Main Street if need be. You know, to help get those planters ready to plant. If our departments are too busy to do that, you know, we would find a way to get that done. But it really needs to be a priority. I know water and sewer and police and fire department, all those things are your main priority, but that's our calling card on Main Street. People don't see out on Cleveland Avenue or Lincoln Way or things like that. Their impression is of Main Street. And if we don't make sure that Main Street is really up to par, then we kind of lose that opportunity for that first impression. It's like meeting somebody with spaghetti sauce on your shirt for the first time. They make an impression. So, you know, it's really important. You know, if you follow me on Facebook, you know I'm a flyer freak anyhow. But it's just not that I'm a flyer freak. It's because, you know, that there's a mental thing with that. And when folks walk down our Main Street and they see that, the impression that they get is, wow, these people really take care of their Main Street. They think that's important. And we've got some folks in town here that are making significant investments on Main Street to get businesses, properties ready for new businesses to come. So, you know, when those folks come, we want them to have a great impression of what our downtown is. So we're willing to help if you need the help to do that. And we want to help because we want to make sure that stays pristine. You know, the bar's been set on that. Folks expect it. Once you get to a certain level, folks expect that level. And when folks come to town, and recently I moved downtown. So I'm really more aware of what's going on downtown now than I've ever been. And a few weeks ago, there was an archery tournament out at the middle school. And downtown was packed on a Saturday afternoon. I went into like Fish Hawk, and there were people from Charleston, all over the place. You know, I'm waiting on whatever I'm getting, and I'm talking to those folks, and I'm always asking feedback, you know, what they think. You know, and they had great feedback, but it was too early. That was in February, maybe, or March. But, you know, people have a really high perception of Buckhannon. And I'd hate to see that diminish, and right now, it's diminishing. And we need to do something to correct that and turn that around. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Buck, I got a comment. Have you experienced this every year?
No.
Okay. I mean, the frustration that I have personally, I love flowers and plants, and this has been one of the lousiest springs I can ever remember. Because of the, I think 3 weeks ago we had 5 degrees.
We did.
And last week, you know, we had snow, actually snow coming in Monday, if I recall. Snowflakes, and the temperature went down to 22 or 23. So I think some of this, I mean, there's no excuse for not weeding the planters, but there may be an issue in regard to the lack of good consistent weather for a while also.
Well,
And have you addressed this to our Director of Horticulture?
no, I haven't.
I think that's what I would suggest initially. That would be the place to go and tell the individual that you're concerned and that you also have some, you sort of made an implication that you got some volunteers that would help maybe. Am I correct on that?
That's true. And your comment about the weather being cold, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But that does not stop the preparation.
Right, I agree.
And the pre-planning going on.
I agree with that.
I mean, I went and helped a guy the other night cover up his stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's really no excuse for it.
Do you like the plant?
I do.
I just got 3 boxes from Bricks and also the Fred Brook Garden Club.
David, I might point out too that he just did tell the horticulturalist about it because she enjoys it. Okay.
The other thing is we have 40 red bud and dogwood trees coming in the morning.
We have a lot of people watching, Buck, so if you'll come up to the microphone. Yeah. And it's for the people that's online, not just here.
You know, I'm just not complaining, I'm trying to do something.
Right.
You know, we have 40 red bud and dogwood trees coming in the morning that we're going to plant in the community, and Buckhannon has been doing that for the past 2 or 3 years, where we'll plant $1,000 worth of trees in the community. So, you know, we're willing to do the work. You know, we just want some support from that, or to at least for it to be a priority for council in the city to make sure that at least that Main Street is looking pristine. So that's my whole point.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a good point, and I think we all agree with what you're saying. We need to be very much aware of that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
As was noted, our city horticulturalist is here. Dixie, do you want to respond or do you want to comment on anything? It's up to you.
Well, I can go ahead if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Here. Yeah, I just wanted to update you guys, and some of that update did have to do with what Buck brought up, is that we did finish the greenhouse, or we're in the process of finishing. It's not quite done, but we did complete our new greenhouse, and so the flower program is now full steam ahead. But the construction did take a little longer than we anticipated. We needed more of the covering materials. It turned out to be a little bit more of a hassle than we had originally anticipated, so it took us a little longer. So I'm kind of trying to balance my time between starting the planters. I got most of them started, but I'm still working on that, and cleaning out the beds at the same time. So I am a little behind as far as that goes, which is why the beds are looking a little bit messy, and the weather, of course, but like Buck said, that's no excuse. I work in all kinds of weather, that doesn't bother me. It's more of a time thing. I'd welcome any volunteers that Buck has or Buckhannon has. I could schedule a day, have a community, kind of like we used to do with Community Unity, do a planter cleanup. That would be wonderful. But I'm currently cleaning up beds. I cleaned 3 today, so that's in the process. Okay.
Thank you.
Real quick, I just wanted to let you guys know, as far as the tree project in Jawbone, I am in contact with Highland. The oaks, they can get us, but the locusts are going to be a little more difficult, so I'm going to be on the lookout for those and trying to see where I can get those that are in a reasonable distance. As far as the phlox, CJ, we were talking about planting the phlox. I think fall would be the better time to do that as far as maintenance goes, because I'm not sure how often I'd be able to get to them to water during the summer. How do
You
you
mean
feel?
on the highway ramp?
Yeah,
Hey, as long as we're moving forward.
yeah, no, I haven't forgotten about it. I was just thinking that maybe
Did
fall.
we get
would be-
approved from the highway department?
We submitted the permit.
No.
They have shortages in their organization now with the permits.
Engineering?
Well, no, with permitting. The fellow that used to do that vacated, went to the utility side, and they've advertised twice for that position.
Just trying to let everybody that's watching and listening in. That's all I'm trying to do.
And as far as the comment about the baskets being taken down a little early last year, that was due to the hot weather in August. We took them down towards the end of September. I did have an idea about that, since we have the new baskets that CJ provided for us that are going to work out wonderfully this year. I have a tentative idea of switching out the baskets for the spring and summer baskets for something with more fall colors, red and oranges, probably in August. But it'll depend on if I can get the materials, but that's kind of my tentative plan, so that we'd have brand new baskets that time of year, and they'd be able to last a little longer. We'd have that fall color going into the fall. And then Jerry Arnold had an idea for the retaining wall bed along 20. And I really like it. I agree with it, and it'll get Pam's evergreens in there. He's thinking some evergreens like spruces in there with a rock bed instead of mulch. Still planters, we can still put planters there. But it is dangerous to work around, and it does tend to accumulate trash just from people, they leave McDonald's, they throw their trash out the window. So if it were a rock bed, it would be easier to clean up. And who knows, maybe we could do a Christmas display there sometime.
Yeah.
All right.
I think you need to say louder, Dixie, that people leave McDonald's or Burger King, and it's amazing how much trash people are throwing out. I live on the corner of Arnold Street in Smithfield. I guess I moved. But I have neighbors complain about people throwing stuff in their yards and on the street. It's amazing what people are doing. And throwing their cigarettes out the window and so forth.
Yeah.
It's very, we need to have our citizens, we can't do much about visitors, unfortunately, but hey, keep our city clean, keep your neighborhoods clean.
Kinsey's case, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just blame the kids.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you, Dick.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Buck.
Thanks, Buck.
Okay, our our last but not least guest this evening who is asked to address the council is Rep. Dusenberry, who's also no stranger to the city council, representing Congressman Alex Mooney's office. So, good evening.
Good to see y'all.
Hi, Rex.
How are y'all?
Good, how are you?
Good.
8 times.
It's been a while that I've been able to attend. I had a little accident with some black ice, which kind of took me off of weight bearing and then hobbling, and now I'm back on full track. I was doing it on the phone and Zoom, but I'm here representing Congressman Mooney's office. Good to see you all as always. Good to catch up on a lot of nice things. I spoke to Mr. Harvey about our office always being open to communications as we were during COVID, and also every time it rains we call our Office of Emergency Management people in case they need anything, and just let them know we're there. And also I was going to reiterate to Mrs. Boston here, Dan, you remember Dan that you met that came with me, Dan? Well, Dan's our one of our district representatives, also a economic development liaison, and he worked with the ARC for 16 years in Washington, D.C. So the congressman, I'm sure, would be more than happy to get a letter of support for your grant application.
Great.
And I'll talk to Dan about that as well. But I just wanted to reiterate that we're here to help if we can, especially with grant support letters. And I see some of the other stuff that we've worked with in the past and trying to get the power generators, and let's see those are working. But like I said, it's good to see y'all again, and I've been a phone call away, and but now I'm back on a lot more than when I was. But let's know if we can help. And some of y'all have been very, very kind and talked to me at other meetings, like Randy when I was calling in over there. And it's interesting to hear the goodwill. Sorry to hear you hurt your leg, but get back on the horse. So do your with it. But let me know if we can help. I'll be more than happy to get in touch with the Congressman's office and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on all the awards and everything y'all are doing.
By the way, Randy talks to everybody.
Yes, he does. That, David. Yes, he does. Well, Weston, the city of Weston has a Randy on their county commission that talks to everybody too. He's a character just like this Randy. But hey, we're all here for the same purpose, and that's to make our community better and have a better quality of life for the citizens. Thank you, man. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a good day and be safe.
Okay, I don't believe anybody else wishes to address the council this evening. So, we're going to move down to our department and board reports, and we will begin with Mr. Jerry Arnold, Director of Public Works.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks for coming.
Ink's dry now.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Jerry.
Street Department crews installing, or has installed the ground stabilization fabric or material down at Jawbone Park. We'll be finishing that up hopefully tomorrow, weather permitting. And we're probably going to ask to purchase some more of that. A few more, we need a couple thousand more feet in order to finish up some of the areas down there that we need to get. Continue to work on the Canal Street sidewalks as weather permits, and this last week hasn't been very productive on that project, I can tell you. We're making the changes to the Gateway West North Side project that were identified in the punch list provided by the West Virginia DOH inspection that they completed. So we begin making remediations to some of the issues that they had pointed out on that sidewalk. The mayor, I believe, has gotten some complaints about pothole patching. Again, we had planned to start on that Wednesday this week, and the blacktop plant wasn't making wearing, they were making base. And again, it's kind of like the stars have to align anymore to get things done. We have to have good weather And we have to have the blacktop plants open and producing the material we're needing. And like I said, we had 2 days this week that we had planned on trying to get caught up on some of the hole patching, and we couldn't because they weren't making the material. But I assure everyone, as soon as that material is being made, our crews will be out patching some of the holes that we've seen over winter.
Well, and this happens every year, and we always get to them. But we would ask for folks to be patient as we come into spring, and we see the potholes, and we'll get to them. But we're not the only community that's utilizing that plant. We're at the mercy of the plant, and every other community within a 50-mile radius is using that same plant.
Well, I can tell you, I say it every year, it's springtime. Everyone, when the weather starts to get nice, it's the same with home as it is in the city and everywhere else. When the weather starts getting nice, we want to see things happen. And everyone's like myself, they get impatient. And just like Buck was saying with flower beds, yes, they're in need of being cleaned. But also, the other part of that too is, it's getting more and more difficult, just as it's more difficult for the fire service to get volunteers. It's getting more and more difficult to get folks, to hire folks even, in these seasonal positions. And we rely on that both in the street and with the horticulture program of hiring seasonal employees. One, you have to wait till they get out of school usually, because that's usually the folks that are interested in the jobs. And two, try to hire someone for minimum wage right now. So, not trying to pass the buck, but just be patient.
Buck left.
Well, I don't know that I can pass buck, but I would try. But anyhow.
But Jerry, we also have a society that, again, is impatient, puts stuff on Facebook and gets other people riled up. And you're right. It is hard to get seasonal people
Again,
in the asphalt plant.
I think everyone is working, and again, I'm one of the most, if anybody knows me, I'm one of the most impatient people about getting things done. Let's drop what we're doing, get it done. Let's get this project completed. And so, as far as the driving force, all of our employees, I feel, are doing a very good job at moving the ball forward. But just be patient. I'm like the mayor. Just be patient with us. We will get there. I promise.
I agree.
Sewer department crew continues to work on Shawnee and Swisher Street projects, and the contractor started installing the new generators at the pump stations. Water department has completed the Vicksburg water line extension. And just under waste collection, just as a note, and it's in your packet, the Upshur County Solid Waste Authority is conducting the free paper shred event this weekend on Saturday from 9 till noon, and that will be at 395 Mudlick Road, which is the new street and waste facility. So please take advantage of that free service. And Mayor, that's all I have. I think Jay had put in just a notice of generators, the shipping dates, the change in shipping dates of generators. You have it in your packet. I'm not going to run through all that, but it looks like that they're, most of which are delayed until December of this year, which is not unexpected.
Same dance, different song.
Absolutely.
So Jerry, I saw you put the turf stabilizing grid down at Jawbone today, but you run a little short, or you need
Yes, about 2,000. CJ, I'd like to purchase another 2,000 feet of material.
Is that something you need us to address, or you got?
Well, I can come back. It's not on the agenda, but we can look at our park budget. I think it's probably there. And again, we purchased about 20 tons of good topsoil blend from Highlands at about $1,600 to put down prior to that stabilization material. And what we'll probably be doing is choking that in with some peat moss and sand to finish the top off and then dress that down and reseed again. But that whole material that we put down today is made to go just over grass, just be compacted over grass, and then the grass overtakes the material, and that solidifies your ground. So, and what I've read on it, because I've read a lot of the, after we purchased it, CJ was the one that actually found the material and was instrumental in purchasing the material. But after we purchased it, I started reading some of the articles of folks that have used it, and it seems to be a really good, in the application that we're wanting to use it in, you know, it is, seems to be one of the best products out there that I've read about for festival use and
Get what you
temporary
need, so.
use.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Spring Street is paved.
It is.
All right.
So is Latham.
So Whiteburn is paved?
Latham is paved.
Latham, I mean, Latham, yeah.
Second Street.
Threw me out there, CJ.
The contractor finished their contract.
Yeah.
Well, the new contractor finished the contract from last year on paving. Yes.
That's great.
It is done. I wondered if anybody was noticing.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, very nice. Looks great.
The sidewalk looks really nice around by where the Traymart used to be.
Willard Way.
Yeah, yeah.
And it will, like I said, the thing about that whole project is it's going to tie the whole downtown together. You know, we still have to go back, and there's a little bit of work on South Spring that needs to be completed with moving green space to the opposite side of the lot down there across from the post office and things like that. But the whole downtown district will be essentially new sidewalks with street lights, and it all matches. You know, we've got the retro heads, as I told the mayor. He keeps pointing out that the light up here is out on the corner of Spring Street, and we know that, but the electrician said that it was going to take some a little more than just changing the bulb. So we have new heads, retro heads, and actually we purchased the heads, and the company we purchased it from said they won't fit the poles. But we come up with a way to retrofit those heads to fit our steel poles on Main Street. So they have the bees on them like the new lights that we put out on Gateway West. And again, some of the other issues we ran into with reducing the size of the width of the sidewalk to accommodate more parking is we took away some of the areas we could put light poles. So we bought sconce lights. We'll be talking with, I've already got permission from some of the business owners, but that'll be something that Tom will have Tom work on with his memorandum of understanding to place these sconce lights on their buildings. We have the power there, power off of our system, but we just need to hang the light on the building. So you'll have sconce lights in some of these areas that we can't get the poles in. So it just adds or will tie the whole downtown together once these projects are completed.
Jerry, when you retrofitted, did you figure that out internally, or?
Yes, Dave, actually we told the contractor what he was asking how we were going, so we provided him with the way to retrofit their poles.
Maybe you can get a royalty.
I give up on royalties one time.
Do you want to talk about F3, or do you want to let Amby talk about F3? Because both you and her have it beside your name.
I'll start the conversation and Amby can jump in.
Okay.
She wants to take the course. I'll start it out. Waste collection, we talked about when we purchased a new facility. Waste collection was using a portion of that facility, and we talked about waste collection paying rent for that. Well, since then, we have actually given up or moved part of the waste collection operation over to allow for fire department to construct and police construct this training facility out there on Mudbuck property. So the proposal is to call it a wash and not charge waste collection rent anymore on the new facility, since we have waste collection has given up property to general fund and facilities. So that's it kind of in a nutshell. Andy, is there anything that you need to add to that?
That's exactly right.
So the ask from council is to not charge waste collection anymore for rental on the property at the new 395 Mudlick location for the property and building at the 444 Mudlick location for the use of a fire police training facility.
So the 444 property, what's its approximate valuation and what were they paying rent? So I guess what I'm getting at is this, would it be 5 years of rent would equal what they're giving up, or 10 years, or is there a finite?
No, I'm saying use of one side of the road opposed to the other, CJ.
It's a washout.
Yeah, we moved out of the shop building. The waste collection garage moved out of the shop building to the other side of the road, essentially. That building is going to become an area for large confiscated storage, as I see it, for police department. There's storage for fire department. They're already talking about some of the things they have in their apparatus bay that they don't use regularly being stored in that, as well as having what Joey Baxa refers to as a dirty classroom. An area that they can go outside and train in this fire training facility, in these metal boxes that they essentially set a fire inside of. And they can train in those and then come into this dirty classroom and have instruction on things that they did. So what I'm proposing is it's going to be a continual use from fire or general fund on the waste collection, and a continual use from waste collection from a general fund facility. So as Dave said, I'm proposing a wash between the two for as long as it's utilized as such. If the fire and police training, this isn't we're not going to continue with this, then at that point, it would be fair to charge waste collection rent again on the other side, or waste collection would have to move back over there, whatever they choose to do. But that's where we're going to with it.
What was the monthly rent
It
allocated?
was going to, I think you all settled on about $1,000 a month.
I mean,
that
that's
waste-
what's
that waste
happening
would-
up to this point?
For the
That waste would
Mudlick
pay.
property.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they traded
You
the
weren't-
Mudlick property.
You weren't paying rent when you were.
They
at
traded
440.
ex-run property for the 395 Mudlick Road. There was a value to that they traded into that as their share of use of that 395 Mudlick property. And then, once that was used up, they were going to pay rent,
Yes.
starting in August of this year.
Okay, thank you.
You weren't paying rent when you were at 444.
No. Well.
The property,
Back up, yes,
Yeah.
we were, because our weld shop was there.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we were already paying. We estimated that about 50%, kind of 50% of the property was being used by waste and 50% by street. And like I said, so we had already had our welding shop over there, and the sale of the property, actually it was traded from Peck's Run, which was a waste collection title property, was traded to Mike Cross when we purchased this, and that was taken off the total amount of property. So waste collection essentially had had already paid rental to the tune of the worth of that property, which was, I'm thinking about $40,000, $45,000, somewhere in that
I
neighborhood.
think it was more like 60.
Was it? But they had already paid that to general fund on the purchase of the property. So as Amby said, use that as that rent established at $1,000 a month to get us to the point in August, waste collection would actually start having to pay rent if council doesn't decide that, the property that we're doing the training center is of the same value that we're asking over there.
Does Dixie stay? Or is she staying in that building?
Who?
Dixie, right? Is she the one across the street? Isn't she in that building that you're getting ready to move out of?
No.
Oh, okay.
She's in the new facility,
She
and
is,
the greenhouse is built on the new facility
Okay,
as well.
yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I move we approve the
I'll second it.
elimination of rental fees paid by the Waste Collection Board.
A motion by CJ, second by Dave Thomas. Is there any further discussion?
Well, the issue is really, this is an internal adjustment. There's no real cash going out. What do you allocate, Andy, in regard to what this area here, the office does, as far as costing out the waste, the sewer, the water and everything? It's 25% each or something like that?
Well, for this, yes, here in City Hall, we divide all of the bills up evenly for waste.
Yeah.
Actually, sewer, water, and waste pay $10,000 per year each for this facility.
And somebody
And
can make a comment, where you're spending more time with the water than you're really doing with the XYZ, right?
It flows back and forth. Sometimes it's weighted one way.
No pun intended.
Perfect.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, motion carries. Hello, Andy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Move right in here. I've got a short report.
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so your balance is for the enterprise funds, March 31st. Waste Collection Board, money market and checking, $1,139,000. They have the CD and savings at $58,000 and that letter of credit for $64,000. Water Board's money market and checking, $556,000. The working capital and savings accounts are $871,000. Sanitary Board money market and checking, $768,000. Working capital, $457,000. And the stormwater fund is at $222,000. The invoices in the bills to be approved in your packet. Just to note a few, $12,500 was paid to the West Virginia Strawberry Festival for their second half per the budget this year. That's the final payment to this fiscal year. $1,000 to the Chamber of Commerce for the sponsorship of the Businesswoman of the Year. $2,000 to the Chamber of Commerce for the Leadership Upshur program for 2022. $2,000 almost having barbecue bash for the Ribfest donation. $1,300 Amazon for police department batteries. $1,300 to Blue Diamond Attachments for skid steer replacements. $2,700 to Custom Truck wiring harness for the truck. $11,000 to George Wilson for doors and frames and hardware for the theater. $71,000 to Commercial Builders for the February and March labor at the theater. $4,800 to Bandman Company for Stockard Youth Center's drill team uniforms. $1,700 to Quarter H for tires for the bus, Stockard bus. $176,000 to Mountain State Electrical for the FEMA generator grant. And to give you a heads up, on the next meeting, the first one in May, I will be bringing budget revisions to you. I usually do that in May to kind of prepare us to finish out our fiscal year. And we'll have discussions about those when I come back in first May.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Abby, at some point in time, could you bring to the council a pro forma in regard to what you think will be the involved costs for the Colonial Art Center?
Yes.
In regard to, what we paid for it, the grants that we have received. We're getting some donations and potential donations, and what we've expensed so far, and what the additional cost may be before we feel comfortable for it completely up and running.
Sure, I planned on doing that.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
Okay, thank you, Amby. Up next, City Police Chief, Matt Gregory. Good evening.
Thanks, Matt.
Few follow-up things here. Currently in the process of reviewing and revising a number of our policies to be consistent with a couple of CLIA standards manual changes, as well as some other issues that were raised at a standards review section of the CLIA conference that I attended last month. We do have a policy committee meeting scheduled for next week on April 28th, and we have a lot of revisions to look at that point. I do anticipate finalizing these revisions here in the next day or so, hopefully getting some more material out to the committee in advance of the meeting next week so that we can move forward. This is all in preparation again to maintain what CLIA calls continued compliance. This is part of the 4-year process of reaccreditation, which began at the very day after of our award last summer for our initial accreditation. Our first component of this, beyond these revisions, will be our first annual web assessment, which is scheduled for later this summer. So I'll have more on that as we get a little closer to that for council. The police department is Strawberry Festival spring upon us. We're actively planning and preparing for that, meeting with a number of community stakeholders, especially our public safety partners, as we plan for a full festival this year. Along with that, just a quick snippet on this, we'll get more out in the days to come as well. We will plan on our annual Blue Wall ceremony, which takes place in conjunction with the Strawberry Festival. And that has always historically been held the Wednesday afternoon of Strawberry Festival week. And so our plans are revolving around that as well. And again, we'll get more on that out as well in the days to come. As you know, we selected one candidate to offer a conditional offer of employment to. We are in the process of going through those conditions to confirm full employment, which includes the psychological testing, the polygraph testing, as well as the medical exam. Those will be going on over the next few weeks. I would anticipate having everything concluded hopefully by the end of May. Actually, I found out that the psych eval isn't going to take place until May 16th. So just a little bit of a gap in getting that confirmed. But we would anticipate things falling in place with that and hopefully having everything wrapped up by the end of May. That being said, with one appointment being made, there is still one identified vacancy within our sworn ranks. That would, since this appointment came from the top 3, the 2 of the remaining top 3 would remain in those positions, with the number 4 coming up into the 3rd spot to make a new top 3. Just as a reminder for council, we need to set interviews in the future to fulfill this final vacancy with this. And that's all I have as part of my regular report.
We have F4 listed by your name, and that is the approval of a mutual aid agreement between the City of Buckhannon Police Department, Elkins Police Department, Philippi Police Department, Randolph County Sheriff's Department, Upshur County Sheriff's Department, Barber County Sheriff's Department, and Tucker County Sheriff's Department. You want to walk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. So this is not to be confused with what council addressed last time that I was here last month concerning the Appalachian Highlands Regional Response Team, where council elected to be involved with this in the capacity of a negotiator from the Buckhannon Police Department being placed on this team. This is a little broader in context. The language of this particular mutual aid agreement is similar, if not identical, to the current mutual aid agreement that we have with our Sheriff's Department, as well as the language that we have had in the past with, in addition to our Sheriff's Department, the Lewis County Sheriff's Department and the Weston Police Department. And the purpose of this particular mutual aid agreement, this is what's considered a general mutual aid agreement in terms of resource sharing, both in terms of equipment as well as, even more importantly, human resources. You will find most departments, if not all departments throughout West Virginia, are obviously big advocates for these because we are all by nature small departments. And oftentimes in larger scale events, it is difficult, if not impossible, to be able to respond and deal with those types of situations on our own. So by virtue, we have to rely on each other to resource share to be able to more effectively respond and manage these types of situations. That's particularly what a mutual aid agreement is designed to address in terms of resource sharing, in terms of force multiplying for each of our individual agencies. And we've seen that success with not only our Sheriff's Department, as I mentioned, but also with surrounding counties that we've had these respective mutual aid agreements with in the past, specifically Lewis County and the Weston PD. This would allow for, again, resource sharing not only in times of emergency, but also for large-scale investigations that overlap jurisdictions, as well as large-scale special events. The Elkins Police Chief, who I had a conversation with, put this probably the most perfectly, in that we, between our two communities, we probably have the two largest festivals in the state of West Virginia. So it only makes sense that we would share resources to be able to help each other to respond more effectively to these types of situations when we need more manpower. We've called on these types of situations in the past, not only, again, as I mentioned, in times of investigation, but also in times of emergency. Going all the way back to the Sago emergency many years ago, we called on surrounding counties to help us to maintain crowd control, maintain traffic control, and things like the aftermath of the Sago emergency or the Sago disaster itself, as well as the memorial service, and specifically the memorial service here in the city of Buckhannon that drew a lot of national and international attention, and we had to have a lot of resources to be able to manage that effectively. On top of our two respective festivals, we also, and I spoke with Randy about this just the other day, this is a prime opportunity to gear ourselves much more effectively for WAMSP coming up and have the resources available to us to be able to effectively and more efficiently address the needs that we'll certainly have with that. So that's in a broad context what this particular mutual aid agreement serves in terms of our respective communities. It is most certainly a force multiplier and a much added resource.
So if the council authorizes me to sign this on behalf of the city council and then you on behalf of the city police department, this, I read the first page of this and it looks to me like we're in. Like as soon as I sign this, we're in, and once everybody else has signed this, this is put together.
Correct.
Okay.
And you're for this, right?
Yes, sir. Very much so.
I move we.
1 second.
Okay, so the motion would be to authorize myself as mayor of the city and Matt Gregory as chief of city police to each sign this agreement on behalf of our community to enter this mutual aid agreement. That's your motion, David?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second? Second, Sheila seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
We'll have a meeting with these respective entities next week. Actually, the meeting is for the regional response team, but this will certainly be on the agenda to discuss. I will communicate the action of council tonight, and again, this will be a work in progress as we put it together.
Okay.
And we'll have more as that.
Sounds good.
If you would stay to sign this, or sign this at least before you leave, and the mayor can sign it, that way Teresa will have it, or you'll have it, whoever's going to take it from that point then.
I don't know, I think this is
We have the
just a
original
copy.
right
I don't know that we have the original that's for
I have it right here.
Okay.
He has it.
I'm ready for you.
Okay, very good.
So, I'll get a
May I
photo.
borrow your blue pen
I'll get a
again?
photo of you two signing it, how's that?
There you go.
Come on.
We're news
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
We'll news release on it, David.
Matt, when will our new hiree go to the academy?
So right now, we are anticipating an August class. That is our hope, obviously, with the academy. They've been backlogged over the last 2 years with the pandemic.
You want me to smile or not?
Because they've had some walls, some gaps in the training, but right now the tentative date is August to start the training.
So do you have to do an application for them to go there? Or-
Yes, yes.
So have you had to start that already?
No, and the reason I haven't is he has to be cleared with the psych eval and the polygraph first. And once he does that, then we will fill out the application and send to the academy. And hopefully, and I'm always, that's one of the first things I send out the door as soon as I can because of the waiting list. So that's definitely on the high priority list.
We're having Chief sign this as well, then.
Matt, I have a question also.
Go ahead.
I've had several phone calls in the last month in regard to a situation that I have no answer for, and you may not either, but do we have a process or procedure in place working with the police department in regard to the halfway houses or opportunity houses that we have within the community? I know that oftentimes they're placed in a neighborhood that the neighbors have some concerns that it may decrease the resale value of their properties. And they asked me, does the city have a process or procedure where, you know, has your department been notified with all the different opportunity houses and halfway houses out there? I believe in rehabilitation. I think that's really important for us to give people a second chance. And you know, some of them are coming from imprisonment, some are coming from rehabilitation with drugs and so forth. But there's more that have come into existence, I think, in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. Do you get involved in that at all? Do you have do they contact you and say, hey, we're going to be moving into a XYZ property, or is that something that you're not aware of?
Yeah, no, quick answer to that, no, sir, we are not involved in that. It's not something that the police department is involved in terms of placement of the houses itself.
Okay.
So.
I think, Mayor, that something ought to be considered sometime about, these are within the city limits, and it makes a difference for some people that are in that particular neighborhood, and maybe with the increase in what is happening. Again, I support what's going on. In fact, I've made some donations to certain situations, but I think that we have a lot more than we did 5 or 10 years ago. And some people are questioning, do you have a process, a procedure, to how many, you know, we're a small town, how many can we really deal with? What if we doubled it or tripled it in the next 10 years? So I'm just throwing that out, something that at some point in time we got to give consideration to. I mean, I think that's important.
I think Mr. O'Neill has a comment about it to offer.
I can speak to that.
Matt, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, sir.
The city, and I'll say unfortunately, the city has no power to regulate the placement of those facilities. Those facilities under state code are not even obligated to comply with our zoning ordinance. Those facilities can go anywhere that the people who establish them want to go. We have the city's hands, and again, I'll say, I'll take my objective hat off here and say, unfortunately, the city's hands are absolutely tied by the legislature.
I think that's really important, that the residents in the whole state needs to be aware of that, and that they don't have any power or authority, or whatever you want to call it, in saying that, you know, they bought a piece of property, and then two years after that, they're gonna have an opportunity house or rehab house right next to them.
That's right.
We have no control of
We
that.
have
Nothing can be done.
Nothing can be done by the city council.
Right,
The
right.
legislature can certainly do
Yeah,
something.
but I think that needs to be, I hope the papers put that out there to say, hey, if you want to, and again, I'm for rehabilitation.
No, I
I think it's important.
understand. I think most people feel the way that you do.
Yeah.
It's just the legislature has elected to grant these facilities carte blanche to go wherever they are deemed to be needed. I'll put needed in quotes, frankly, anywhere in the state of West Virginia.
It's like exporting the illegal immigrants from south up to the capital.
I don't want to get that narrow.
I had to throw that out.
I'm just telling you what the status of state law is.
I think, Tom, well, I didn't have an answer for anybody that called me that. I said, I'll bring it up to.
No, I would tell them, I would direct them to their state representatives.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
It's your time anyway, so you go right ahead.
Well, I'd just like to discuss a couple of things. One, I'd like to just report on a meeting the Planning Commission took place on Monday. Planning Commission is recommending to the City Council that it amend ordinance number 244, the zoning ordinance, to change the permitted uses within the R2 zone to explicitly include condominiums and other unit property. R2 allows apartment buildings and boarding houses and dormitories and all kinds of things, but condominiums or unit property are not listed on there the way that zoning ordinances work. You've got to, and they're permissive ordinances, you've got to have them. So I would, so the Planning Commission is recommending to the City Council that it include condominiums within the R2 zone, and I've been working on that ordinance, and it will be before you for first of 3 readings on the next meeting, the first meeting in May.
Did you say also unit property?
Yeah, well, condominiums are, a condominium is a unit property, so unit ownership, property that's in unit ownership, most often are condominiums.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would like, we've discussed it from time to time, and I've discussed it with individual members of council, but I'd like to maybe advance the discussion a little, not tonight, but maybe at a future meeting, to revisit the codification of our municipal ordinances. This was something that had begun several years ago, and then it was discontinued, but in light of just the number of ordinances that we have, and we're getting a little bit more complicated, it would simplify things greatly from a kind of legal management kind of perspective if we revisited codification of our city ordinances and create a municipal code that then ordinances would amend, so that the council's legislative functions would then look much more like the state legislatures, where there is a code and there are individual pieces of legislation that you would to amend that code. We don't have that right now. We just have the individual ordinances. So when we go through and want to amend an ordinance, sometimes we have to pull in 3 or 4 or more ordinances to amend all of them because of the way things kind of pile up. And if we had a municipal code, it would simplify things.
You could drop 3 or 4.
Well, you don't only need 1. I mean, if you wanted to do something, for instance, I'll give you an example. The last time you all amended the parking ordinance there are like 4 or 5 different parking ordinances that we have to pull in each time you want to look at parking as an example. And it's just, I can follow what's going on, but if I'm just an average citizen who wants to kind of, educate myself and, be cognizant of what's kind of going on, it's becoming a much more cumbersome task. So I would recommend that you consider it'd probably be, and I've reached out to the Codification Service. Actually, he just emailed me back about 5 minutes ago. So we're going to talk, if not tomorrow, then sometime next week. And at the next meeting, I'll hopefully have a quote. But I think it'll probably be in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000. But frankly, I think that's more or less.
15 to 20.
But the new ordinance would be that the code would supersede the 3 or 4 that are part of the new ordinance.
Well, the code would, you create the code by taking all of our 456 ordinances and consolidating them into basically one document, and then assigning numbers and everything so you can index. Basically, a code is the indexed group of ordinances.
It's a lot easier
And
to
so
do
it's a
research.
lot, much easier. And so from now on, instead of an ordinance amending a prior ordinance, you'd have an ordinance amending the municipal code, and
Okay.
So obviously no decisions or anything,
Sure.
obviously tonight, but I'd just like to maybe move that ball down the field a little bit.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about F5?
Yeah, so F5, you have before you for second reading ordinance number 456. I would respectfully ask that you consider tabling that for tonight. In reviewing state code, I think there may be some unintended consequences to the draft as it exists right now. Specifically, there is an article in state code, if you care, it's Chapter 8, Article 21, that establishes boards of parks and recreation commissioners. That code vests some very, very wide-ranging authority in these commissions, much more than I think the council intended in creating. I think, if I understand the council's intention on this Parks Board effort, it is to create an advisory board, not an independent corporate entity that will
Correct.
do things like hold real estate in its own name, the ability to sue and be sued, the ability to hire and fire, the ability to generate its own revenue. I don't think you want that. So I've made some tweaks. Actually, I'm almost done with the amendments.
Should be a committee.
It'll be called a board, but it'll be
Okay.
called it'll be called an advisory board.
Okay.
And there's some specific disclaimer language in there that the council does not intend. You'll see it when you have the updated text, but it just clarifies that we're creating, or the council is creating, an advisory board, not a independent commission, which is what the code
Thank you for
provides
looking out for us, Tom.
Well, that,
That way the liability issue also doesn't change.
No, it would remain, that's correct.
does that reset the clock, or are we good?
No, it could still be considered on second. It's basically, now you can't amend an ordinance on its final reading. Okay, so I guess, so let me reset. Yes, it would affect.
It would reset the clock.
Yeah.
First reading.
Well, okay, so we would have to go back and do a first reading over again, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. I think that's fine.
Unless
Yeah,
you
if we
want to
wanna
take
get it
it,
right.
I mean, I don't think it's quite ready for.
Yeah.
No,
tonight.
so, I mean, my intention was to create the board with the July 1st appointments. So we're still well within the time frame to be able to do that, even by going back to the drawing board, so.
Very
That's
good.
correct.
Good.
All right, we do not, just for Robert's rules, we don't need a motion to table, we can just agree to table, so, at the recommendation of our city attorney, so. Okay. All right, council, correspondence and information. We have a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, that is now April 22. Notice of Sudden Link Business is now becoming Optimum Business. Charles Gibson Library Director's Report for April 2022. Report of the cat and dog activity for from the Upshur County Commission for January, February, and March 2022. A&T Enterprises LLC zoning form to the ABCA. And then we've also got letter, this is what we talked about before. Jerry touched on it with the hazard mitigation emergency power grants, delayed again. And bid tabulation, Tennerton Tank painting bid opening April the 7th. I want to touch on this just for a second. Myself, Jerry Arnold, Jay Holland, and Randy Sanders met with the County Commission today. The County Commission has been held today some public hearing meetings about the expenditures of their share of the ARP funds that came to the county. The City of Buckhannon and the Upshur County Commission each received ARP funds. City of Buckhannon received just barely shy of 2.5 million, and I believe the Upshur County Commission received somewhere just a little bit south of 4.6, 4.7 million, right in there. So the City of Buckhannon, as we know, we have dedicated the projects that we would like to see our ARP funds used for upgrades of sewer and stormwater and water projects here in the community. One of those projects included a rehabilitation of the Tennerton water storage tank. This basically provides fire flow to Buckhannon Upshur High School. That's the main function of the tank. That's kind of above where L&T Farm Equipment was, and kind of across Route 20 from the high school. Initially, we asked the County Commission last June for roughly $300,000 because our specs showed that it was going to be a project of close to $700,000. Well, Jay and Jerry, they have worked some numbers with Kelly, and they got a lot of the information back as to what was going to be needed to rehabilitate the tank, and it turns out that the entire project was about $300,000. So we revised our request to the Upshur County Commission, and we asked for a $150,000 contribution. The Upshur County Commission has received close to $7 million in requests for the $4.6 million that they have to allocate. They do not wish at this time to assist with this particular project, which means the City of Buckhannon will take care of this rehabilitation project. We are very soon going to be required to fix this tank. Every tank has to be monitored and reviewed every 3 to 5 years, which we do. We are in compliance with that, but every tank has a point to where it needs a total overhaul. We are at that point with this tank at the high school. There is some good news, though, I want to report. A second line item that the City of Buckhannon Fire Department requested from the County Commission was assistance at the tune of $60,000 to help fund the new training facility that the city would like to build out on the Mudlick property. The County Commission agreed to and is supporting a check to the City of Buckhannon via the Fire Board to give all the fire departments in the county some ownership in this, some payment of $60,000 to the building of the new training facility. So we were successful in working with that, and they also, thank you, Brandy, I almost forgot, they also allocated $90,000 to help the Buckhannon Upshur Airport as with its, as we know, it was unsuccessful in receiving a crucial FAA grant last year. The airport is doing much better from a financial standpoint with more tenants, and we are going to be eligible to get another grant from the FAA, but in the meantime they are working to put $90,000 toward upgrades in the facilities at the airport. So I'm happy to report that the County Commission and City of Buckhannon are working together on a couple of initiatives. We wish that we could have gotten the tank funded, but the good news is for us is the tank project is much lower than we initially anticipated. So long story, but I wanted to bring everybody up to speed on the Tennerton tank painting. And again, that's going out to bid, or that went out to bid on April 7th. We have a tight window to get that project done. We cannot do it while students are in school at the high school. We are going to have to do it when the students are not at school, because again, if something should happen at the high school, that is the only fire flow that would help put out the fire at the high school. There's no other water source up there to make that possible. So we will take care of this project. It benefits both county residents and city residents in that area as well. But again, the primary function is fire flow to the high school. So, but good news. We had a great meeting today. We thrashed out some issues and some communication that we haven't had the best in the past, but I'm happy to report we're going to be working together on a couple of projects. And then finally, in your correspondence and information, you've got a letter of support for the Army National Guard Buckhannon Brushy Fork Armory ADD ALT project, and that's additions and upgrades. We wrote a letter of support at the request of the Upshur County Development Authority to try to get some upgrades at our Armory Convention Center facility. Okay. Under the consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes for special meeting 4-4 and then 4-19. We do not have 3-17 or 4-7. And we've also got the approval of the building and wiring permits, approval of the payment of bills. We received a resignation of our city appointment, Larry Carpenter, at the Upshur County Board of Health. Carpenters have relocated out of state to retire, and so I would ask the council to approve appointment of Dr. John Mathias as our city appointment to the Upshur County Board of Health, and he will fill Larry Carpenter's unexpired term. Can I have a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
A motion by Dave Thomas, a second by Jack Rigger. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Motion carries. We are done with all of our strategic issues for discussion and or vote for the evening, so that brings us to council comments and announcements. We'll begin over here with Pam Bucklew.
I'm glad to see we got the streets paved that we said we're going to, and I feel we need to get everything finished we have started. I would also like to get the theater finished. Is there a deadline? Do we plan on having that finished at any certain time?
It will be done this year.
Okay.
It will be. We are earnestly working with our architect and the contractors that are there to have this thing done this year.
When you say year, to be fiscal year?
No, I mean year 2022.
Okay.
And also, I think in a couple months, we need to have a town hall meeting and really get the people's opinion about our new SYCC building and what we should do over there and how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
So in the next couple months, I think we need to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
CJ?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Jack?
I'm really encouraged at the completion of North Spring Street. If I recall, that can had been kicked down the road for 27 years with many of the underlying issues in the infrastructure. It's good to have that completed. Jerry and his men are to be commended, along with all the other city employees that just do a tremendous job for us. We have Chief Gregory back here who is stellar, and we're grateful for all that you do for our community. And we know how hard and the extraordinary efforts that you take to excel in your position, and we thank you for that. Let's see, and Mr. O'Neill, the code, you have my support, and it's not even on the agenda. If anyone has ever tried to travel through a law book, of any, particularly West Virginia school law, and you try to connect all the different things that relate, it's impossible. And I think it's a tremendous move for the city to get our ordinances codified. So that's about all I have to say. And it's good to be working with the county commission. That's a positive.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Thanks, Jack. Sheila?
Well, I just would like to thank you. I mean, when you hear things like you're out there Friday evening, I know how busy you are. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for caring about our city and going the extra mile. I appreciated that when I heard it, so that was it.
Sure. Thank you. David?
I'll be planting about 500 bulbs the next 3 days. Anybody wants to volunteer, come on over.
You had a very ornery look on your face. I knew something was coming.
I just couldn't decide whether to say. Y'all be safe and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Follow-up concerning the $90,000 for the Buckhannon Airport. I serve on that board, and what a lot of folks may not realize is we depend on fuel cells, the sale of fuel for the aircrafts that are coming in, either to have appointments here in the area or simply to buy fuel as they're traveling through. And we were hit severely through COVID. And it really hurt our bottom line financially. So I was very, very pleased that the county commission did take a look at that. This is something that will help the airport thrive because we're not constrained with these funds under FAA grant regulations, so on and so forth. So it really, as a board member of that authority representing the city, it takes weight off our shoulders, and we can kind of move forward now with some great things at the airport. Do want to update folks a little bit on WAMSB, World Association of Marching Show Bands. We've had a great media blitz over the past week and a half to 2 weeks. We've done radio interviews, television interviews. We've had newspaper and television pickups in Portland, Oregon, in San Francisco, California, in North Carolina, on and on and on. So it's really getting across the nation that we'll be hosting the World Association of Marching Show Bands in 2023. I look forward to working with Chief Gregory from the law enforcement aspect. And so thankful we have the CALEA base to build the infrastructure that we're going to need. And then with this new partnership that the mayor and the chief just signed tonight, we hopefully will have the reinforcement as far as law enforcement agencies are concerned to really, you know, go shoulder to shoulder and make it a really safe event. So a lot of good announcements coming. We picked up a major sponsor we can tell more about later. That we'll be able to publicize for the Parade of Nations. So things are coming together now, and hopefully we'll have continued good news. That is it. So, Mr. Mayor, again, thank you.
Thank you, sir. One thing, council, I meant to actually have on the agenda tonight, and it slipped my mind, but in thinking about it this week, we're getting very close to Strawberry Festival, and as you'll note, we have a meeting, our regular meeting next is on May the 5th, but then our second meeting would be on May 19th. That is the night of the Junior Royalty Parade, and all the downtown streets are closed, and I want everybody to be able to go out and support the Junior Royalty. So I would ask that on our next council agenda that we have a move of the meeting from the 19th to Tuesday the 17th that week. So I'll ask for your approval at the next council meeting for that week. But we are getting very close to Strawberry Festival, and it's going to be a full festival this year. I'm very excited, and I think that our community is as well. It's good to be getting back to normal. So I just want to thank everybody for what you do. And although I appreciate you saying thank you, Sheila, I don't. I always hope that nobody ever notices those kinds of things. I just like to work in peace. So, but I like to paint curbs too. I also apparently like to paint the streets and the way into my driveway. Okay, I would entertain a motion that at 8:54 we adjourn.
So moved.
All right.